Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, I invite you to subscribe. If you are returning and have chosen to either waste or invest your time with me yet again, cheers, I appreciate it muchly. That being said, if you are new to the channel, you are likely here for one of three reasons. You are looking for Disney vlogs that nobody asked for, but you're gonna get served nonetheless. You're here for the most epic, profound, nuanced, intelligent film and TV reviews known to mankind, and that is thanks part and parcel to my partner in crime on those, Chad. I will link the Chad and Mel Movie Hour playlist if you're into that. Or you're here for women's issues, specifically those around the politics of periods. I will link that playlist, of course, as well, as this is a video that's going to fall into that category. Now, if you've been to my channel before and you've watched any of these videos, you know that this Politics of Periods series stems from my involvement with a nonprofit called #HappyPeriod, which provides menstrual hygiene products to homeless and underserved menstruates, in my case in the Bay Area, but it's a nationwide organization. So there is a playlist specific to that. There is a playlist specific to the politics of periods, which is a little bit of a broader conversation, and then there's a women's issues playlist. So all of this will be linked or in an iCard, or you can just go to the channel and, watch what you want. So with that being said, if you are new and haven't already subscribed, if you're going to subscribe for no other reason, please subscribe for these types of videos because it's extremely important, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's, as the kids say, true facts. It's really important that this type of information gets shared and disseminated, and so please feel free to do so on your own social media outlets if this information speaks to you. If you want to find out more offline, you can DM me. All of my social media is also linked in the description box. And yeah, with that being said, today's video, and you're saying I'm wearing like a Halloween shirt, it's because I filmed quite a few videos before I left town for school, so it's not yet Halloween. And by the time this goes up on the channel, it's probably going to be like Christmas time, so deal with that. But this news broke on October 23rd. I saw it on Huffington Post and I saw it on sheknows.com. So both of the articles I'm going to reference will be linked below. But this news broke October 23rd, and it is the news that the Always Feminine Hygiene brand is going to be removing the Venus symbol from both their marketing and their packaging as of December 2019. So again, if it's not already obvious, this is a Politics of Periods video, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the trans issues surrounding menstruation, which I have touched on in several other of the Happy Period and Politics of Periods videos. Because in having been involved in this nonprofit, I came to learn very quickly that there are plenty of men who bleed, and we'll circle back to that and kind of do like a trans 101 here in just a second. But I'm going to kind of cover the headlines, and I'm going to go through both articles. I'll probably be quoting a lot, so if I'm referencing and reading, please bear with me. But yeah, with that being said, again, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and cheers. So here we go. Essentially, on October 23rd, Huffington Post released an article entitled "Promoting Inclusivity, Always Nixes Female Symbol from Sanitary Pad Wrappers," i.e. the Venus symbol that has been associated with the Always brand for the past 35 years. Always is owned by Procter & Gamble, and essentially this happened because a trans male activist and filmmaker, Ben Saunders, who actually was the recipient of the Young Campaigner of the Year award by a UK charity called Stonewall, had been petitioning and campaigning the Always company to remove this imagery from their packaging, as it was exclusionary to people who were non-cis or gender non-conforming or trans, but who also still bleed. And again, we're going to get into definitions and vocabulary and all of that in just a second. Just want to cover the headline. So let me just read what Always had to say first and foremost in response to this. So a Procter & Gamble spokesperson told CBS News, this is the week of October 23rd, quote, "We routinely assess our products, packaging, and designs. We take into account a broad array of factors, including feedback from consumers, to ensure we are meeting the needs of everyone who uses our products. The change to our pad wrapper design is consistent with this practice. We listened to you and our marketing team worked up a solution. We are absolutely grateful for having people like you voicing their opinions." And they had announced that the new packaging will start to roll out in certain markets starting in December and continue to follow, other markets will continue to follow suit. And Always has, their blanket statement is that, quote, "For 35 years, Always has championed girls and women, and we will continue to do so. We're also committed to diversity and inclusion and are on a continual journey to understand the needs of all of our consumers." So, take that with a grain of salt, or take that, with, whatever amount of sincerity you want. Ultimately, Procter & Gamble is a huge conglomerate, it's a corporation, so you could have the conversation of, are they pandering, are they giving in because they simply have to, or are they really coming at this with the best of intentions? I don't think we'll ever know, and my response personally to that question is, who cares? If their intention is maniacal, or coming from a completely bottom line profit perspective, I really don't care if it yields positive results and means that fewer and fewer people are going to harm themselves because they don't feel seen and validated by the society in which they live. So yeah, Ben Saunders tweeted in response to this news, quote, "After having contacted @Always back in June about their packaging that discriminated against their transgender customers through its design that featured the female symbol, I'm thrilled to hear back that they've now redesigned the packaging, which will roll out in December," end quote. So for me, and if you're new to the channel, I'm very left of center, but I'm certainly not so left of center that I am a liberal PC fascist. I think that's a dangerous and gross overcorrection that society and culture is seeing here in America to patriarchy and to the things that have been toxic in our culture for millennia. I think that the pendulum always swings really far to one direction or the other as it tries to find equilibrium, and right now, not to take anything away from Me Too or Time's Up, because I am a supporter of both of those movements, but I think that with that, and with anything, any movement, any ideology, any shift in a paradigm, there's always going to be fundamentalism as a result of overcorrection. So until we really find our footing, we're going to continue to see a lot of liberals who are going to be grossly overcorrecting with PC nonsense. Again, these are my opinions, that are not going to serve the cause. They're going to breed animosity, breed division, by virtue of the fact that they're fundamentalists and dogmatic beliefs and stances. Rant over. So the Huffington Post article goes on to say, and this is being written by the author, that in the wake of P&G's announcement, some critics on social media have blasted the company for caving to the demands of crazy liberals and for attempting to, quote, "eliminate and erase women." And they're calling for a boycott of the Always brand. So what you see is what I just mentioned, that we're seeing an overreaction that is not only an overreaction, but it's also an incorrect response. And how do I want to articulate it? The response is not, I don't know how I want to articulate this. The response, they're responding to something that's not even happening. So I don't really know how to articulate what I want to say, but it's an overreaction for sure, but the reaction and the response seems to be part and parcel, just an outlet for overall rage and anger that has no proper outlet. So you're seeing people, individuals, you're seeing groups outrage, specifically women who have been disenfranchised for millennia. You're seeing this rage spill out, and unfortunately, because it doesn't have the proper container, because we don't know exactly, myself included, where and how to direct our anger, sometimes it gets directed at the wrong places. And by wrong, I mean we're directing anger at people that are trying to, or in this case a company, corporation that is trying to affect positive change, their agenda, whatever that may be as a corporation. Let's put that over here for a second. But we're directing our anger and rage at an entity that is trying to course correct for the better, to be more inclusive, to be more aware, to be more understanding, and to validate people that have been disenfranchised, which ultimately there's nothing ever wrong with that type of effort. So when I say wrong, that's kind of what I mean by the wrong type of reaction to this situation. Jack Turbin, who is a resident physician in psychiatry at Harvard Medical, told NBC News that Procter & Gamble's decision to remove the quote-unquote unnecessary symbol sends a message to transgender and non-binary people that the company, quote, accepts, respects, and cares about this population, which is a powerful statement for a community that is so often marginalized and rejected, end quote. Now, Steph DeNormand, who is a manager of Fenway Health's Trans Health program, also agreed and stated, quote, for folks using these products on a nearly monthly basis, it can be harmful and distressing to see binary/gendered images, coding, language, and symbols. We're going to circle back to that. She goes on, so using less coded products can make a huge difference. Trans and non-binary folks are constantly misgendered, and a gesture like this can broaden out the experiences and open up spaces for those who need the products, end quote. So that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of the Huffington Post article. So again, these are my opinions I'm sharing with you as somebody that is, again, left of center and somebody who has worked with the homeless community, specifically homeless menstruates, over the past 5 years. And if you've watched any of the Happy Period videos or any of my other videos in this series, we intentionally use the term menstruates for just this reason. There are plenty of people who are cisgendered and who are biologically female who don't bleed. For example, a woman who's menopausal, a woman who's pregnant, they don't bleed. And there are plenty of people who are trans men, meaning born biologically female, but who identify, their gender identification is male, bleed because they still have a working, functioning uterus, vagina, maybe not, but still a functioning uterus. That means that they bleed. So there are so many folks that don't fall into categories which we've been raised with over the past, since the dawn of time, right? Like since we started having these conversations, it's been man, woman equals male or female, and we know that's no longer the case. So because I've worked in that community, I make it a point to say menstruates, menstruators, because it's not just women who bleed. And of course, that's what we're talking about. So the She Knows article is pretty amazing. And it was, let me see if I can pull up the author. So the She Knows article, and again, this will all be linked below, was written by Kelly Gonzalez. Now, I can't even tell you how brilliant her writing is in this article, how on point she is, and just what an amazing read this is. So the She Knows article is also about this same situation. Excuse me, mommy needs her medicine. So the She Knows article is entitled, No, Acknowledging that All Genders Can Menstruate Doesn't, quote, Erase Women. So, again, I personally do not think that removing the Venus symbol, removing language, symbols, coding from sanitary menstrual products menstrual hygiene products and sanitary products is erasing women in a traditional sense in any way. So let's do kind of like a trans pronoun 101, because I realize that, just because I'm aware of this stuff doesn't mean that everybody is. And this is not meant to be a lecture. I'm just trying to share information to give context to the article and help you to reconsider how you might interact with people that don't fall into categories that you're familiar with or comfortable with. So this is coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, everyone is assigned a sex at birth based on their genetics and body parts, and your sex is not the same as your gender. Now, even that requires pause, because we know now that there have been thousands of children, probably hundreds of thousands of children, since the dawn of time, or at least since the dawn of modern Western medicine, that have been missexed or misgendered at birth. We know that there are plenty of people who are born with ambiguous genitalia, where maybe the clitoris is extremely large, maybe the penis is extremely small, to where there's ambiguous genitalia, and those are typically referred to as intersex babies. Some doctors and families will allow that child to go through life simply as intersex and wait until they're of age to decide what gender they identify with. But we know, unfortunately, that the other side of that story is that doctors in the past, for better or worse, based on the times in which they were existing, would be forced to gender a child based on the more predominant aspects of that ambiguous genitalia. So there are plenty of children who are now adults, and there are plenty of children still being born who have ambiguous genitalia, but the doctor decided, oh, well, the clitoris was small enough to where this is a girl, or the clitoris was big enough to where this is a boy, or the penis was small enough to where this is a girl. So that's a whole nother conversation, but just to keep in mind, this quote by the American Academy of Pediatrics bears keeping in mind that even that is a very complicated and nuanced situation. They go on to say that gender identity is defined as a person's deeply felt inherent sense of being a girl, woman, or female, or as a boy, man, or male, or as a blend of male and female, or as an alternative gender altogether. That's actually, by the American Psychological Association. They go on to say that gender identity differs from sex assigned at birth to varying degrees and may be experienced and expressed outside the gender binary. Let me read that one more time. Gender identity differs from sex assigned at birth to varying degrees and may be experienced and expressed outside of the gender binary. So, I'm a cis woman. The cis prefix, CIS, means that the biology with which I was born matches the gender that I identify with. I identify as a female. If I were born as I was with female biology, but I identified as a male, my gender would differ from my sex, and vice versa. So they go on to say cisgender people have a gender that aligns with their sex assignment, whereas trans and non-binary people don't. There are an estimated 1.4 million trans and non-binary Americans. That's just us, people, that's just us. When we try to describe biological processes like menstruation and pregnancy as what defines women as unique and special, we are reducing womanhood to our biology. And as women who like to think of ourselves as being woke or inclusive, we have to realize that that's not the case. So we know that cisgender people have a sex assignment that is in line or aligns with their gender identity, whereas trans and non-binary people do not, right? And there are an estimated 1.4 million trans and non-binary Americans. So when we try to describe biological processes like menstruation and pregnancy as what define women, we are really limiting the scope of what it means to be female. And as women who are, let's just say, cisgender, cisnormative, who consider themselves to be woke, enlightened, inclusive, we really have to get past this idea that our wombs and our being able to give birth and our ability to menstruate are the only things that make us unique and special as women, because we know that's not true, and we've actually been fighting against these projections politically. But yeah, it's very complicated, and what's great about the She Knows article is it names all of these things. The author goes on to say, no matter if we're cis or trans, we should all be able to agree that women are way more than our bodies. We have shared experiences, pressures, joys, struggles, and those are what unite us. And I think that's what makes Miss Gonzalez's article so brilliant, is because she's calling out the lack of intersectionality amongst women, and especially even feminists, and feminists who consider themselves woke AF, as the kids say. Like, we still have a long ways to go in terms of being inclusive of people who look other than a traditional woman's body, who look other than a traditional female body, but are still bleeding because they have a uterus and or a vagina. These are facts. So the article goes on to say, unlike gender, menstruation is about your biology. If you have a functioning uterus and a vagina, you're going to bleed. So a trans man is a person who is born with female biology, i.e. a uterus and a vagina, but who gender identifies as a male. So they're bleeding. There are plenty of people you've passed on the street who look like a guy, but they're bleeding every month. You have to just accept these as facts, people. Like, this is just what's happening. So she goes on to interview an OBGYN named Dr. Jennifer Conti, who is dropping so many truths in this article. She says, not all women menstruate, and not... Let me take that one from the top. So she interviews a OBGYN, Dr. Jennifer Conti, in this article, and this Dr. Conti is dropping so many truths, I can't even... She says not all women menstruate, and not all people who menstruate are women. Hear that again. Marinate on that one. Not all women menstruate, and not all people who menstruate are women. Get the program. If you have a uterus and aren't pregnant, breastfeeding, menopausal, or hormonally suppressing your periods through birth control, or dealing with a condition like, polycystic ovarian syndrome, you're likely menstruating. Now, trans women are something different insofar as they were born biologically with male reproductive organs, but they gender identify as a woman. So they are not bleeding, okay? I think, this article talks about, and so did the Huffington Post article mention this ever so briefly, that there's this backlash, right, from probably cisgendered, cisnormative women who are, you're taking the Venus. This is one more thing that's taking the spotlight off of women. Women are fighting for their rights right now. Like, we don't need to be eliminated or erased. But this is a myth. Like, the idea that by being inclusive is somehow going to take the spotlight off of you is just, this is a fallacy. This is the same as, like, if somebody else gets a job I'm just going to use an immigrant metaphor, if you will indulge me and not come for me. But just because somebody gets a job doesn't mean necessarily I don't have a job. Just because somebody else is doing well doesn't mean I'm not doing well. Just because somebody else is being validated and seen and included by society doesn't mean I'm being shunned. This is just fallacious. This is a fallacy. This is just a false argument and a false comparison, and it's creating division and it's creating misinformation. So I think it's important to realize that just because there are other people now more than ever who identify as female and want to be seen and want to have marketing and packaging that uses language and coding and imagery and symbology that is representative of their gender identity, does not mean that we are any less, that the language coming to us, the coding coming to us, the symbology coming to us is somehow lessened. I don't understand. This is just such like a false comparison to me. I really don't understand women who are so fearful of not being seen that they're worried about trans and non-binary women coming for their spotlight. Like, only in lifting other women up, and by women I mean anyone who identifies as female, are we going to get anything that we want accomplished. This idea that a woman, a biological, cisgendered, cisnormative woman is threatened by a trans or non-binary woman is just, it's crazy to me. You would hope and think that we would be smart enough by now, clearly we're not, but you would think that we would be smart enough by now to realize that only in embracing and validating and seeing these women who identify as such, even though they don't have the same parts as us, is the only way we're going to lift each other up and have a united front to achieve the things that we need to, politically, personally, whatever. It boggles my mind. It really does. And yeah, the article names that, like, it's almost as if women, cisnormative women who are threatened by this, like, are assuming that these people are choosing to bleed. They're not. They were born with a uterus and a vagina. They're going to bleed. Just because they don't look like a woman and they want packaging and marketing that speaks to who they are and their identity, like, that's what we've been fighting for. So why the hell would you shame anyone for wanting the same thing as you? I mean, it's just the hypocrisy, and more importantly, the cognitive dissonance that exists amongst women who claim to be feminists is astounding. It's astounding. No one gets to choose whether or not they bleed. You either bleed or you don't. I mean, okay, I can't. All right. So anyways, we went through the definitions. We went through the statistics. Oh no, we didn't go through the statistics. So fasten your seatbelt because this is when it gets upsetting. So, research shows that denying, invalidating, or ignoring a person's gender comes with real health consequences. Trans kids are nearly 4 times as likely to deal with depression, and many studies have shown that trans kids are even more likely to struggle with their mental health and attempt suicide the more they experience discrimination and stigma. And a article published in the Journal of Homosexuality found that trans kids who are denied access to gender-appropriate bathrooms are 45% more likely to attempt suicide. The bathroom issue is a whole nother conversation, but it's also not. Like, if you are a woman and you've ever had to pee so bad and the line for the ladies' room is so long that you've run into the men's room, I don't ever want to hear you say that a trans person can't come into your bathroom, because your fear is based on fantasy. The American Journal of Sexuality Education found that most LGBTQ kids received sex ed that only talked about heterosexual people. The more excluded sexual minorities were from the discussion, the higher rates of their anxiety, depression, and suicide risk are in high school and, of course, later in life. The flip side is also true. More inclusive classrooms make students feel safer, face less bullying, and they ultimately get better grades in school, and hopefully there's less suicide attempts. This same Dr. Jennifer Conti, who is dropping the truth, says, quote, if a man with a uterus needs to wear a pad to soak up his period blood, what else would you propose he use? Man pads, toddler pull-ups, end quote. I mean, give this woman the Nobel Peace Prize. Like, she's just naming this shit, like, left, right, and center. Like, why are people up in arms about a logo on a piece of filament that wraps a fucking napkin that you throw in the trash after you strap it to your vagina? How many people are looking at their always pads and like framing it and like, look at this beautiful work of art with the Venus symbol? No. Do you even notice it half the time? No. Do you care? No. If you do, why? And you didn't until somebody else said, hey, this bothers me. Go away. Like, leave us alone. I mean, honestly, like, find a hobby. Okay. Anyways, the author goes on to talk about how women, our womanhood is precious to us. We want to have a shared experience around our gender identity and our biologies. But she also states that it costs us virtually nothing to include people of other genders in the conversation, not just the conversation, but just in the space of menstrual hygiene products. Like, if you are bothered that much by a symbol being removed, again, from a piece of paper that you throw in the trash 3 to 5 times a day, 1 week out of every month of your life, the life that you're bleeding, you need to find something better to fill your time with. I don't know what to tell you, honey, but like, have a cocktail, like, read a book. I don't know. Like, if that is what makes you feel erased, like, you are not paying attention to the real things in the world that are actually erasing you. Gender, like, wage disparity, taboo that still exists around you bleeding, period, end of story, lack of maternity leave, lack of paid maternity leave, shaming around feeding in public. I mean, maybe use some of this energy on, like, some of the real shit that's affecting you. I don't know, that's just a thought off the top of my head. Anyways, they interviewed a feminist philosopher, I know, but stay with me. Dr. Kate Mann tweeted, stay with me, she tweeted, cis women are confusing not being at the center of a discourse with erasure. Named. We don't need to be at the center of the conversation. I mean, we do need to be at the center of the conversation when it comes to course correcting these injustices, but just because cis-normative women are not at the center of this particular conversation doesn't mean we're somehow being erased. The article goes on to point out that it's in fact the opposite. Everything that's going on around women's issues constantly reminds us and reinforces the fact and the truth that women are still invisible in a lot of spaces. And so it takes nothing away from us in our fight to be visible and to get rights around gender, wage equality, around maternity leave, to eliminate the taboo against, around menstruating, which still somehow exists, sexual harassment. It takes nothing away from that fight to include other people who identify with that fight. And just, like, hello, empathy in general, like, what the fuck happened to that? I don't know. Where was I? What's at the heart of the backlash against this is the author of the article speaking. What's at the heart of the backlash against acknowledging that all genders can menstruate is wanting to retain control of the narrative, which we get. I get it. I mean, we're women. We need this right now. Like, we need to be in control, but not at the cost of excluding other women. And not all women have uteruses and vaginas. Deal with it. It's about cis women not wanting to relinquish the comfortable assumption that every conversation around periods has to do with them. It's about wanting to keep that space for themselves and trying to stop it being taken away. In short, it's a loss of privilege. Why is this bitch naming it? She's just naming it. Where I see a step towards equality and viability, others experience a removal, a discomfort, otherwise known as privilege. Read that, hear that again. Quote, where I see a step towards equality and viability, sorry, I said visibility. Where I see a step towards equality and viability, others experience a removal, a discomfort, otherwise known as privilege. This is a quote by sexologist and sex educator Emily DePass. That's all this is about, is cis-normative, cisgendered women having no hobbies, nothing better to do at their time. So instead of fighting the real fights, i.e. the ones that I've named 3 times over now, they're worried about losing this eensy bit of privilege. And most of these women, I'm going to venture a guess, are white. It's a generalization, it's a risky assumption. I'm sure there are women of color who feel the same way, but I'm going to venture an assumption that the majority of these bitches are white. Get a hobby. Get a hobby. The reactions, same person, Emily DePass, the sexologist and sex educator. The reactions to the removal of the Venus symbol exemplify privilege and the discomfort in existing alongside trans and non-binary identities. It's a confrontation that many cis hetero identities do not yet have language for. End quote. Now, let's talk about that for a second. One of the things that's happening in this liberal PC overcorrection is that we've become fascist police when it comes to dead naming, misgendering, misnaming people, not knowing all of the pronouns. Like, the liberal left, like, leaves no room for error. Like, if you dead name somebody on accident, dead naming is if you refer to a trans person by their old name, if they've chosen to change it, based on what their parents named them versus the name that they may have given themselves after they've transitioned. For example, Caitlyn Jenner. If you were to refer to Caitlyn Jenner as Bruce, you would be dead naming her. This is very triggering for people who have made the transition. So, the liberal PC police leave no room for error. So even the most left of center of us are going to mess up. You know, even people with the best of intentions are going to not know the right pronouns, not going to know how to have a conversation, not going to even yet be comfortable with any of this, whether you're left, right, or whatever. We have to leave room for a learning curve here because this is happening very quickly and very aggressively. And so we have to allow people an opportunity to fuck up as long as they're willing to learn. And as long as they're making an effort, we cannot come for people who make a mistake along the way. Rant over. My God, I didn't know I was going to get so hot about this. What else? You guys, this article, I can't even tell you. Yeah. It's about privilege. It's about, you know, Me Too, Time's Up, and all of the rest of it have been so necessary and so important. They're not perfect. No movement is, but they are necessary. They are important. And women's rage, female rage, needs to be validated and seen. And so that is twofold, right? Like, women's rage. Well, women usually means biology, right? Like, I have a uterus and I have a vagina. Well, also, that rage is valid and important, But there are people that have uteruses and vaginas that don't identify as women who also have rage, okay? And they also have basic monthly menstrual hygienic needs. But I say women's rage and female rage because there are trans women who are extremely angry and have every right to be, because not only are they not at the table, they can't even get close to the table, let alone have a seat at it, because they're getting murdered at record rates, especially trans women of color. So there's plenty of rage to go around. I don't know why cisgendered women, specifically white women, do not get that intersectionality is critical to feminism, and in lifting each other up, we lift ourselves up. I just don't understand this cognitive dissonance. Everybody's upset, the world is on fire, so why can't we just like hold hands for a second and just realize like there's so much feminine anger and rage, like let's aim it at the things and the people and the entities and the ideologies that are keeping all of us here, rather than fucking infighting and keeping ourselves here. Because ultimately that's what's going to continue, that's what's going to happen is if we don't get the fucking memo, like we're gonna be our own worst enemies, and we kind of are at the moment. Anyways, that's my own thing. But oh, what else? Okay, so this is kind of the final thing I wanted to talk about, which we've touched on, but the article kind of ends with saying, you know, women are way more than their bodies. And I'm gonna read a little bit more here, and I apologize, a lot of this has been me reading, but it's a lot of material here, and even with my notes, I couldn't memorize all of it. But this is kind of the point here. And this is the author of the She Knows article speaking. Nobody is going to forget that many cis women menstruate and give birth. To the contrary, our societal preoccupation with cis women's menstrual cycles. Hello, we still can't deal with the fact that women bleed. 99.9% of the menstrual hygiene marketing campaigns use blue. We talked about this in previous videos. Only a handful are starting to use the color red when they show how absorbent something is. Excuse me, I mean, taboo against bleeding in the American West in 2019 is very real. Don't even get me started on what's going on in third world countries with taboo. Girls are killing themselves. Watch my other videos, read an article. Calm down, Melissa. To the contrary, our societal preoccupation with cis women's menstrual cycles and ability to give birth tends to disadvantage us more than anything. Women still get passed over for jobs on the chance they'll get pregnant, and then professionally sidelined or fired if they actually do. American women also used to pay more for health insurance because of their procreative abilities until Obamacare's anti-discrimination policies came along, though the Trump administration put a solid effort to dismantle those rules. But as for menstruation, in 2016, people still brought up the whole what if she's on her period thing as a reason why women shouldn't become president. This was rhetoric in the campaigns and in the debates. We should also acknowledge that not all women have vaginas, as is the case for many trans women. Again, a trans woman was born biologically male, identifies as a woman. And not every woman with a vagina is able to give birth or breastfeed. None of these women are any less of a woman because of what their bodies can or cannot do. Hear that again. None of these women are any less of a woman because of what their bodies can or cannot do. This doesn't even get into the menopausal discussions of, you want to talk about erasing women? We don't see women of a certain age. We certainly don't see women who are menopausal, who are no longer reproductively viable, who are no longer attractive by society's standard. I mean, look at Hollywood. I mean, we're not even touching that conversation. So if you're worried about the erasure of women, flip that camera around and look at yourself. Dr. Mann who we referenced earlier, says being inclusive around all procreative activities is better for trans men and non-binary folks who participate in them. It's also better for cis women who don't or can't. It's better for trans women who typically can't, and it's better for cis women who do, absent bad ideology, end quote. Hear that again. It's being inclusive. I'm going to do a little abbreves here. Being inclusive around all from the top now. Being inclusive around all procreative activities is better for cis women, absent bad ideology. Keywords: absent bad ideology. Get rid of your fucking bad ideology. It's based on fallacy, based on false arguments, based on false comparisons. At the risk of using a really cheesy metaphor, or perhaps a profound one, depending upon how you read this, like, if you have a light on in a room, or a lamp on, turning on another lamp doesn't take the light away from the first lamp. It just adds more light. Like, I don't understand. It's like these people are using addition by subtraction to reference The Office. Like, that's not a real thing. Like, turning on more lights doesn't dim the glow of the first light. It just adds to the light. One thing that actually makes women unique and special is our willingness and dedication to supporting and lifting up the most vulnerable above us. The bottom line is that everybody deserves to be validated, supported, and given access to healthcare resources as they navigate their biological realities, no matter what their gender or identity might be. People menstruate, not just women. So I know that was a lot of me, like, going off on a tangent, and I honestly didn't expect to go off on such a tangent, but the more and more, like, I reread this article, like, the more stuff comes up, and the more stuff, like, I think about, and the more, you know, stuff I've read, stuff I've experienced, and just, like, so much of it is just, to me, common sense, which I know is not so common, but it's like, again, at the risk of using that shitty metaphor about light, like, you light more than one light, it doesn't diminish the light I had on. My light's still shining just as fucking bright. Women claim to want to, like, have sisterhood and lift each other up, but we have a long ways to go. And I think, like, one of the first things we can do is to just learn and be aware that there are people who identify as women and as female who may not fit the mold that we are used to, and that is okay, and that might be scary, because change is scary, but it's not a threat. There's a difference between being a little bit scared because of change and being threatened. Nobody is threatening you. No one is coming for you. Somebody who looks like you that has a dick that goes to pee in your bathroom is not going to kill you. They're not going to rape you. They're going to pee. Okay? Just like when you didn't want to wait in the ladies' room line and you went into the men's room, did you rape anybody? No. You just went in to pee, because that's what bathrooms are for. Find a hobby. Use your anger and direct it towards something that actually matters, like getting equal pay, like getting paid maternity leave, getting paid paternity leave, eliminating sexual harassment in the workplace and in all spaces, eliminating taboo around public breastfeeding and around menstruation in general, and maybe just remind yourself that every time you lift up another woman, no matter what's between her legs or inside of her body, you're lifting yourself up and you're lifting your causes up. So this is probably the most preachy of all of my videos, but I'm, sorry, not sorry. These conversations need to be had, and yeah, like and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. I really do appreciate your watching. If this speaks to you, please share it. Please give it a thumbs up. Please comment below. Yeah, and if you're interested in finding out more, all of the playlists for similar content will be linked or be in the iCards. But yeah, please stay tuned. There will be plenty more of these fantastic rants by me coming soon. And yeah, I appreciate your watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Cheers.